In life, there's this one thing that's really been consistent in my life, and it's helped me in many different areas from design to my goals to my way of living. And if you want your life to be a lot easier in 2025 going onwards, you need to keep watching this. I have this ethos that I learned in university. And of course, you guys know that I'm a graphic designer by trade. And I studied graphic design in university, and one of the first things that they taught me in university is the idea that less is more. Less is always more. So let me break it down for you before I go into the main chunk of why this was a game changer for my life. Now, less is more when it comes to design is that we need to focus on the function of what we're doing. Many people, when they design things, you can see that when it's an amateur kind of design, someone that hasn't maybe spent a lot of money on it, or someone that's just doing it themselves and they don't really have a design expertise, they feel like more is more. So they'll add glitter to their logos, they'll add so much text to a story. They'll on their website there'll be lots and lots of pictures. On a magazine, the layout will be messy, all these kind of things. All of these things only serve as a distraction to the main point you're trying to make or the problem that you're trying to solve. The reason why graphic design is important is because it solves problems. It's not because it looks good necessarily, which is a part of it, but it is primarily about function over form. And if you're distracted by things that are not meeting that function, then it's really not really meeting the brief. You have to follow the brief. And so they taught us that less is more. So don't put things just because. Don't add features to your design just because you like them, because that's not what the brief requires. Your point of the point of being a graphic designer is to solve problems and solve problems in the most efficient, straightforward way, right? If you have to jump through several hoops, it's just a distraction, it's just more stress, and it's really not needed. So that's why when I design things, I design more like a minimal kind of person. I don't do too much of my designs. I try and get very specific because I want to solve business problems. And it takes a while to get that out of your mindset because we're taught that more is more. And like in school, my higher subject was art and it's all about expression, right? But in graphic design, there's room for expression, but it's mainly about fulfilling the requirements of the brief. So if someone wants to make money from their business, that is a requirement for the brief. If someone wants to draw more attention to buttons on the website, that is a requirement of the brief. Everything else is secondary, right? You can do everything that really, really specifically in order to reach a goal. And that's the ethos of less is more. And it is all over design. Have you ever opened an app that has loads of pop-ups or loads of unnecessary ads? It's a distraction and it's really unpleasant and it makes you want to close the app or close the website, or a book that is just really, really, really complicated to read. Now we're going away from design now. If you're a writer and you are writing a story and you're writing a story and just adding loads of like vernacular phrases and Shakespearean language that's not really needed for the reader. Again, thinking about the audience, if you're writing for children, you're not going to use Shakespearean language. You're going to use very, very straightforward language. So it's more than design. And there's a book called You Are a Designer. It's a really cool book. And I read it. It's very easy to read. I think everyone should read this kind of book because it talks about being straight to the point. Again, less is more. Now that I've laid down the foundations of why less is more in design, let's talk about why less is more in life. After learning that less is more in university, that actually started bleeding into areas of my life. And I realized, Demi, you're actually a simple person. And not to say I'm stupid, far from it. But I really just don't like unnecessary distractions, things that are just unnecessary. I'm a very straightforward person. Growing up, they used to call me lazy. That was kind of my thing. Even when I went to boxing, they called me lazy boy. But that was because I was unfit, not because I was lazy. But growing up, people used to call me lazy, right? And I used to hate it. Like, I still don't like it, but I've had to kind of take that meaning and turn it on its head. Bill Gates says that you should hire lazy people because they're the ones that are going to solve your problems in the most efficient way, or something along those lines. And I feel that me being called lazy was a misunderstanding of my way of thinking. I've always thought less is more. So I wouldn't do something just for the sake of it, just because other people are doing it. just because it's the culture. It's not something that I would do. It doesn't, I'm like, why? Why should I do that? Less is more. So if I'm trying to go on a journey, even as simple as going from point A to someone's house, I'll find the most simple and efficient way to do it. If I'm doing work, I'm going to find the most simple but efficient way to do it. I'm not going to do things just because. I'm going to try and fulfill the requirements of the brief in the most efficient and simple way. I'll give you an example. This is kind of going back to design, but it's also about a way of thinking. When I worked for a company called JJ Food Service, we used to do these really thick catalogs. And these catalog come out maybe once every quarter, and it took a long time. It took us like over a month to finish these projects, and it was a team of 3 designers. And there was loads of categories in these brochures. They were thick. So there was packaging, food, desserts, all these things. And we had to work side by side with these category managers to get their latest products. But the prices of these products are changing every day. And it was very stressful. And part of that stress was how long it would take to actually put this brochure together. So we'll have to take some data that they've been given us, and we had to export them as a separate file, as a tab file. If you've ever exported an Excel file as a tab file, you know what I'm talking about. It looks mad. And then we'll take that and line by line, we'll put them into the brochure. And I was just like, there must be an easier way to do this. Again, less is more. Now I'm thinking about systems. I'm not thinking about necessarily the design. The design is part of it. I'm thinking about time. It's taking us so much time. It's taking us like 2 months to do these things. And it's easy to make mistakes because we're rushing to the wire to get this thing printed and distributed to subscribers, to people in restaurants and stuff. So I experimented. And I look online. I'm someone that's really good at researching as well. So I was like, there must be an easier way to do this, because we would be pasting every line, and then we'll have to put styles to every column on the table. So the left would be bold, the middle would be italics. It was insane. I found out that you could take each column and add a visual style to it, so that when you pasted it, the lines from the tab, I think it was tab delimited file or something like that. When you pasted it into the table, it will automatically add the styling of that to the column. And it's reduced the amount of time by, I would say, 50% at least. So rather than spending 2 months on this brochure, we will spend like a month. It was ridiculous how much time it saved us. And my manager was so grateful, because it's saving all that time. Again, less is more. So it allowed us to do less work so that we could do more checking of the work. So less is more. So the reason why less is more is super important is because when you have less distractions, you have more powerful results, more attention on the things that really matter. Let's move it on to processes, because I was talking about processes here. That's one process. Less is more in processes as well. And when you are focused, you actually achieve more. One thing that I do whenever someone inquires, right? Now, in my processes, I'm trying to streamline my processes in this year. And one of those things is making it very, very simple for me to book calls with clients. And normally what people would do is that they'll DM me on Instagram, or they'll send me an email, and I'll be like, oh, what time are you free? I'll have to align calendars. I'll have to, make sure I'm free and they're free, and maybe make sure my wife is free, because if she's jumping on the call. And it's just inefficient. And then on the call, we have to talk about everything, and which is nice, and then we'll have to send a proposal and guess what their budget is, kind of. And that I realized that that's not an efficient way to work. We can reduce the amount of time spent wondering if a client is correct, and reduce the amount of time spent trying to find a time to have a conversation with them. It's just online as well. Shouldn't be this complicated. Simple, less is more. Solution to this: Calendly. I have a Calendly account. I added questions to the Calendly account, qualifying questions to make sure that it's not a waste of my time, it's not a waste of their time to come and talk to us. So these questions are like, what do you need from us? Do you need a logo? Do you need branding? Do you need a website? All these things. And what most important thing on that thing is, what is your budget, right? And I have a certain range, and a lot of agencies do this. There's a range about the budget, so you can click what range you can afford on there. And there's something very practical about that, is that rather than someone that wants to come to us for like that's really, really, really can't afford us and is not ready. People that are not ready wouldn't contact us because they'll look at the form and be like, okay, maybe the budget isn't right, or maybe they don't provide the service that I need. And that saves a lot of time for us trying to qualify that client. And then if they're serious about the work, they could just book a slot and then it shows up on a calendar. It's fully automated. And that is something that's really helping because it takes all the stress out of trying to decide trying to guess if a client is right for us. So less is more in our processes because it takes the thinking out of it. If you've ever read the 4 Hour Work Week, the 4 Hour Work Week talks about this in that it's when you automate your life, you're spending less time stressing, the less time stressing about things like systems and things that you don't really need to stress about, the more time you can spend on things you actually love doing and spending time with yourself and going on holidays and stuff like that. When you automate things, one of these things is my wife and I, we were so busy once and then we didn't really have time to clean the house. And one of our neighbors said, "Hey, well, I'm starting to clean houses." Always tries different things, which is quite cool. One of the things she was trying to do was like be a cleaner, and we were just like, we'll do a trial run. So she came in and cleaned the bathrooms, and it saved so much time. So less time was spent on that weekend. It would normally take us like 3 hours to clean the house, top to bottom. We didn't need to worry about that. We just did the other areas, but she did the bathrooms take such a long time. I personally clean the bathrooms as well, so it takes me a long time. And our neighbor, cleaned the bathrooms. We did not need to worry about it. We paid her a certain amount, and it was such ease in our mind. So that's like outsourcing things so that you can spend less time on things that you hate doing is one of the biggest game changers. And if you can afford it, I would say outsource what you can so that you can actually do things that you love and do things that you really, really want to do. And the last thing I'm going to say, there's so much more about less is more being my ethos, really. Less is more with my services. Can I do brochures? Yes. Can I do packaging? Yes. Can I do websites? Yes. All these kind of things. But will I do them for the right projects? But less is more. So I focus on brand identity design. I've realized that I'm passionate about that. So I want to do less of the other stuff and do more of the brand identity work. So therefore, clients that come and see my website and look at my social media are not distracted by the fact that I can do leaflets, I can do brochures. They're not distracted by that. What they are seeing is focused. They're seeing more of the fact that I can do branding, I can do brand strategy and brand identity. Less is more. I hope you're getting what I'm talking about here and how it's switching your mind. The last thing, when it comes to your goals, less is more with your goals. It's 2025, it's January. At this time of year, people make New Year's resolutions, they make goals, right? And they make goals for the year. And one thing that my wife and I have decided that we're not doing is making goals for the year. We are making 12-week goals. And the reason why we're doing 12-week goals is because, again, less is more. Where people fail is that they have a goal for a big amount of time. And by the time it comes to like maybe March, if you're lucky, the goals have just gone, they're just in the ether somewhere and you just don't know what's happened. And that's the habit of us. Like we have goals that we want to reach, but we put so much into our list of things that it becomes overwhelming and we're unable to focus on the things that really matter at that certain time. So we've picked 3 things to focus on for the next 3 months. And that way we can achieve more and have more wins because we're focused on less things. Everything else, I'm not even thinking about other things. Like it comes to mind, but I'm just like, it's not a priority now because there's 3 things that I'm focusing on for this period of time, for the next 12 weeks. So less is more. Less distractions, more focus. And that helps me be less stressed, less preoccupied with things that don't matter at that time. One more thing I'm going to add to this, less is more when it comes to finances. So there's a concept called the snowball concept. Debt snowball, or debt avalanche. And this is for when you want to pay off debts. And when you're paying off debts, some people try and just pay off everything at the same time. Like, oh, I'm going to put a bit of money here, a bit of money here, a bit of money here. Just, and it's like, nothing ever seems to, you don't really get any wins because you're doing things in small increments because you're trying to do so many things at the same time. Again, less is more. The snowball effect is you focus on the quick wins. So it's like, okay, what am I going to focus on for now? Go to the thing that has the least amount of debt in it. Let's say you owe 2 grand somewhere and then you owe £500 somewhere. You're going to snowball it. So you're going to focus on the smallest debt to have quicker wins. Again, that's less is more. Forget about the other things. Just don't let them add interest, but forget about the other things. Where can you have quick wins? Don't get distracted. Focus on where your money is going for you to get out of that debt, and then you can have quick wins. And then because you're not distracted by so many other things and you're taking off that debt, you can now focus on other things. So less is more really just applies to everything. Absolutely everything. And I'm very thankful for that because now when I'm solving problems, when people ask me, I'm really good at solving problems, is what I learned from university. And when people come and ask me about certain things, that's why I'm able to focus on the problem being solved rather than the nice to haves. Because the nice to haves are just nice to haves. It's really, that's all they are. But if you can focus on the problem being solved using the less is more method, then you'll find that you're going to actually achieve much more because you're not distracted by things that don't matter at this time. They might matter later on, but right now they probably don't. So let me know what you think. Let me know in the comments. Subscribe if you haven't so that you can see more videos. And I'll catch you on the next one. Take care of yourself.